Friends, today we dive into one of the most pressing and overlooked developments in South Asia, one that has direct consequences for India's security, trade, and regional stability. I am talking about the ongoing political instability in Nepal, a nation that shares centuries of culture, history, and geography with India. At first glance, what happens inside Kathmandu might seem like Nepal's domestic issue. But if we look closely, we see how every tremor in Nepal's politics shakes India's strategic calculations. From the modus movement in the Terai region to the growing influence of China in Nepal's infrastructure and defense sectors, the implications are far-reaching. So let us take a journey into this unfolding story and understand why Nepal's internal politics has become India's external challenge and why New Delhi is watching every development with deep concern. Stay with me till the end, cause this is not just a Nepal story is a story that tells us where South Asia is heading in the next decade. Nepal has been in political turmoil for many years, moving from monarchy to democracy, from a Hindu kingdom to a secular republic, and from one unstable coalition to another. Since the abolition of the monarchy in 2008, Nepal has struggled to establish a stable government. Prime ministers change frequently, coalitions collapse, and parliament often fails to function smoothly. This instability has meant that critical issues like economic reforms, foreign investment, and border negotiations remain unresolved. For India, this uncertainty is a major headache because instability in Nepal translates into unpredictability along a shared 1,850-kilometer-long border. And unlike other neighbors, India and Nepal share an open border where citizens of both countries can move freely without visas. This open border, while a symbol of friendship, also becomes a channel for smuggling, trafficking, and sometimes anti-India activities if political control weakens in Kathmandu. Another major concern is that every time Nepal goes through a political crisis, external powers jump in to increase their influence. China, in particular, has used Nepal's instability as an opportunity to push itself deeper into Nepal's political and economic system. Whether it is building highways across the Himalayas, investing in hydropower projects, or even directly engaging with Nepalese political leaders, China has made sure that India does not remain the only big brother in Kathmandu's politics. This creates a direct strategic competition for India. The more unstable Nepal is, the easier it becomes for Beijing to strengthen its grip. And when Nepal tilts towards China, India's traditional sphere of influence weakens. This is why every crisis in Nepal is also a test of India's diplomatic skill. The current political scene in Nepal is marked by frequent tussles between the ruling coalition and the opposition. Governments fall quickly, and the constitution itself has been a subject of repeated controversy, especially among marginalized groups like the Madhus and Janajais, who feel excluded from Kathmandu-centric politics. These groups often look towards India for moral and sometimes political support. But whenever India is seen as interfering, nationalist leaders in Nepal accuse New Delhi of meddling in domestic affairs. This delicate balance between protecting Indian interests and respecting Nepal's sovereignty is extremely difficult to maintain. If India pushes too hard, it is seen as a bully. If India stays too quiet, it risks losing space to China. That is why Nepal's political instability creates a diplomatic tightrope for India. Another angle to this story is security. Nepal is not just any neighbor, it lies in the heart of the Himalayas, a region that has always been of strategic importance. Instability in Nepal means possible safe havens for anti-India forces. It also creates space for foreign intelligence networks to operate near India's sensitive northern border. For example, during past crises, there were reports of foreign arms being smuggled through Nepal. And Indian agencies remain worried that extremist elements can exploit Nepal's instability to create problems in Indian states like Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, and West Bengal. In short, when Kathmandu shakes, the shockwaves reach Patna, Lucknow, and Kolkata. This is why New Delhi cannot afford to ignore what is happening inside Nepal's parliament and streets. Let us also talk about the economic implications. Nepal is heavily dependent on India for trade, fuel, and transit. Almost all of Nepal's imports and exports pass through India. Instability in Nepal means disruptions in trade policies, sudden shifts in taxation, or uncertain business environments. This creates problems for Indian investors and companies operating in Nepal. It also impacts India's energy plans because Nepal's rivers have immense hydropower potential, and India wants to harness this clean energy. But unless Nepal has a stable government that can guarantee long-term agreements, projects remain stuck on paper. So Nepal's instability is not just about politics. It directly affects India's economy, energy, security, and regional connectivity plans. Now, let's consider the emotional and cultural ties. India and Nepal are linked through centuries of shared traditions, languages, and religions. Millions of Nepali citizens work in India, and many Indians live in Nepal. Families are spread across both sides of the border. This closeness means that instability in Nepal also creates humanitarian and social challenges for India. When Nepal faced a constitutional crisis in 2015, there were massive protests along the border, and supplies were blocked. India was accused of enforcing an unofficial blockade, which created anti-India sentiments among many Nepalis. That single episode showed how quickly political turmoil in Nepal can turn into anti-Indian narratives that damage public goodwill built over centuries. And once public opinion turns, it becomes difficult for New Delhi to operate smoothly in Kathmandu. So, what is the way forward? India must continue to engage all political forces in Nepal without taking sides too openly. It must support Nepal's democratic process while also ensuring that its own strategic red lines are respected. This means more investment in Nepal's infrastructure, more people-to-people exchanges, and more cultural diplomacy to balance China's hard power with India's soft power. At the same time, India must strengthen border security and intelligence cooperation to ensure that instability in Nepal does not spill over into Indian territory. In the long run, the goal must be to help Nepal become strong and stable enough to resist external manipulation while remaining closely tied to India through trust and mutual respect. Friends, as you can see, Nepal's political instability is not a small issue confined to Kathmandu's power struggles. It is a challenge that tests India's diplomacy, economy, and security. Every fall of a coalition, every protest on the streets of Nepal, every tilt towards Beijing of it has ripple effects that reach New Delhi. And in a time when India itself is rising on the global stage, it cannot afford to have instability right in its neighborhood. The story of Nepal is a reminder that geography cannot be changed. India and Nepal will remain neighbors forever, and their destinies will remain linked. That is why India must remain patient, proactive, and pragmatic. Instability in Nepal may continue for some years, but India's approach today will decide whether the future of South Asia is cooperative or conflict-ridden. And so, as we close this discussion, I ask you to think, can India strike the right balance between friendship and firmness? Can Nepal overcome its endless cycle of instability and emerge as a reliable partner? And most importantly, will external powers like China succeed in filling the vacuum left by weak governments in Nepal? Or will India and Nepal together write a new chapter of stability? These questions will shape not just the future of India-Nepal ties, but also the future of South Asia. Stay tuned, because what happens next in Kathmandu is going to matter a lot more in New Delhi than many realize.